If I told you that the ordinary piece of fabric you are wearing right now has shaped some of the greatest turning points in human history, would you believe it? Try to imagine a world without clothing. Even thinking about it feels almost impossible. Yet, the long journey that stretches from animal hides to today's high-technology fibers carries a story far greater than one might initially imagine. Textiles are not simply about what we wear. They emerge as an invisible force in the rise of empires, the formation of trade routes, the triggering of technological revolutions, and the construction of social identity. From ancient weaving inventions to modern engineering marvels, every single fiber carries both humanity's struggle for survival and its creative intelligence. This is not merely a historical narrative. It is a fundamental journey of discovery that binds all of us together. Once you understand how the fabric on your body carries thousands of years of innovation, culture, and transformation, you will never look at a garment in the same way again. In the history of humanity, textiles emerged far earlier than we often assume. Clothing was never just a means of covering the body. It was one of the most essential tools of survival. Early humans processed animal hides to protect themselves from cold climates, harsh winds, and heavy rain. Over time, these raw skins were transformed into primitive garments that could be shaped using bone needles. Archaeological evidence shows that even thousands of years ago, humans had already learned how to scrape hides, soften them, remove fur, and adapt them directly to the human body. Yet the true beginning of textiles would come through a much more refined discovery than animal skin: plant fibers. Humans began to observe plants in nature that did not easily decay, that resisted breaking, and that softened when exposed to water. Roots, stems, and bark could be separated into fibers capable of intertwining. These fibers were twisted by hand into yarn, and the yarns were then intertwined to create basic woven structures. This moment marked the true birth of textiles, the logic of producing yarn from fiber and fabric from yarn. In this early stage, textiles directly affected the mobility of human communities, their hunting abilities, their capacity to build shelters, and their overall standard of daily life. Clothing, shelters, bags, nets, and ropes were all products of this early fiber technology. For this reason, textiles must be recognized as one of the oldest engineering achievements in human history. It was a quiet success, yet one that would play a decisive role in shaping civilization for thousands of years to come. Archaeology presents us with a remarkable picture. In completely independent regions of the world, different societies discovered similar fibers during the same historical periods. This shows that textiles did not arise primarily through cultural exchange, but through the universal necessities of human life. Egyptian linen is one of the most well-known examples. Grown in the fertile soils of the Nile Delta, the flax plant became indispensable in ancient Egypt due to its fine, durable, and cooling structure. Linen was used not only in daily life, but also in mummification practices. Even today, linen fabrics preserved in pyramid tombs remain intact after thousands of years. Anatolian wool represents another major revolution. Nomadic and semi-nomadic communities discovered the insulating properties of wool through the domestication of sheep. Thanks to its adaptability to different climates, wool was used not only for clothing, but also for producing durable items such as tent covers, carpets, and felt. Asian nettle is surprisingly considered one of the hidden heroes of textile history. Its fibers are exceptionally strong, and when processed correctly, they can produce a texture as lustrous as silk. Archaeological findings confirm that nettle fabric was produced across a vast region stretching from China to the Balkans. The common point among all these fibers is clear. Societies independently reinvented textiles by discovering their own ideal fibers based on geography and environment. This suggests that textiles are not merely cultural artifacts, but almost a genetic component of civilization itself. One of the most striking developments in textile history is the transformation of fiber from a gathered natural material into an engineered product. This transformation marks one of humanity's earliest technological revolutions. The first step was spinning. Fibers were twisted together to create stronger and more durable yarn. While this process initially relied entirely on human hands, it gradually accelerated with the invention of spindles and primitive spinning tools. Then came weaving. Yarns were interlaced in horizontal and vertical directions to create a continuous fabric surface. This weaving principle remained almost unchanged for thousands of years, because it was based on a logic so effective that improving it required millennia. With the emergence of weaving looms, textile production shifted from an individual skill to a collective system of production. Looms increased speed, allowed larger fabric surfaces to be produced, and significantly raised the commercial value of textiles. This process was not merely about manual dexterity. It represented one of humanity's first steps toward organized mass production. Weaving required rhythm, discipline, repetition, and mathematical consistency. Through this transformation, textiles became a cultural technology that combined nature's raw fibers with the engineering intelligence of the human mind. This fusion would become one of the driving forces behind the advancement of civilization. Textiles did not remain simple materials for covering the human body. They became fundamental tools in the formation of economic systems, social hierarchies, and political power structures. In the ancient world, fabric often held value comparable to currency. This alone demonstrates how strategic textiles were as a resource. In Mesopotamia, for example, temple economies were largely built upon the production and distribution of linen and wool. Textile production mobilized labor forces and activated long-distance trade networks. At the same time, fabric became a visible expression of social status. Fine linens symbolized purity among priests, while richly colored fabrics signaled the authority of the aristocracy. Texture, quality, color, and even sheen revealed which social class a person belonged to. This reality led to the emergence of sumptuary laws. From Rome to Japan, many cultures created legal regulations defining which colors and fabrics could be worn by whom. Textiles were also deeply woven into cultural identity. Every region developed its own characteristic fabrics: Scotland's tartan, Central Asia's ikat, Anatolia's kilims, Africa's kente cloth. Fabric became the silent carrier of belief, heritage, and collective memory. All of this shows that textiles shaped not only the visible appearance of civilization, but also its social structure, economy, and distribution of power. To weave fabric was, in many ways, to weave society itself. Silk stands among the most valuable textile materials in human history. Discovered in China, this extraordinary fiber created a revolution in both economic power and cultural interaction. According to legend, silk was discovered when Empress Lezhu noticed a cocoon unraveling in her tea while sitting beneath a mulberry tree. This story emphasizes that silk was not an ordinary fiber, but a refined engineering marvel offered by nature itself. For centuries, silk production was kept as a state secret in China, and exporting it was strictly forbidden. Yet global demand for silk was so immense that it soon became the central commodity of transcontinental trade routes. Thus, the greatest trade network in human history was born: the Silk Road. This road transported far more than fabric. It carried ideas, religions, technologies, and cultures across vast distances. Chinese silk met Roman gold. Caravans crossing the deserts of Central Asia triggered economic and cultural revolutions. In many ways, silk became the first true symbol of globalization. Silk was also regarded as the ultimate indicator of status. From Roman senators to Japanese samurai, it symbolized power, elegance, and prestige. The quality of silk clearly marked one's place at the top of society. The impact of the Silk Road extended beyond commerce, reshaping science, art, and diplomacy. It rewove the fabric of human history itself. Every fabric carries a story, but color gives that story a soul. In the ancient world, producing color was anything but simple. Dyes were extracted from plants, minerals, shellfish, and tree resins through long and expensive processes. As a result, color was not merely aesthetic. It was a political and social symbol of power. Purple dye is the most striking example. Derived from the murex sea snail in the Mediterranean, it required thousands of shells to produce a single gram. Consequently, purple was reserved exclusively for emperors and royal families. Imperial purple was not simply a color. It was authority made visible. Ancient civilizations also mastered reds, blues, blacks, and yellows through remarkable chemical ingenuity. Maya blue, Egyptian blue, and Chinese carmine red stand as early masterpieces of applied chemistry. The development of dyeing techniques directly shaped textile value. Permanence, water resistance, and brilliance determined a fabric's worth. Dye masters were therefore regarded as the invisible engineers of the textile world. Without the revolution of color, textiles would have remained purely functional. With color, they became expressions of identity, power, and aesthetic vision. Throughout the Middle Ages, textiles were not only an economic asset, but a symbolic tool defining social hierarchy. In many European cities, wool and linen production became so central that textile guilds effectively governed urban life. These guilds controlled prices, quality, and labor conditions, functioning almost as states within states. Textiles visibly separated social classes. The quality of wool, the fineness of linen, and the richness of velvet and brocade revealed social distance. Kings and nobles wore garments embroidered with gold thread, while peasants relied on coarse, heavy weaves. With the Renaissance, textiles joined the explosion of art, science, and craftsmanship. New weaving techniques, complex motifs, finer threads, and advanced dyeing methods transformed textiles from craft into art. Florence's silk workshops, Venice's velvet production, and Bruges' wool fabrics became iconic symbols of the era. Fashion was born during this period. Clothing became a language of identity, taste, and status. Fabric was no longer only worn, it was communicated. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the 18th century, was one of the most radical transformations in human history, and textiles ignited it. Hand-weaving done in homes and workshops was reshaped by machines. The spinning jenny, invented in 1764, dramatically increased spinning speed. Steam-powered looms followed, and the flying shuttle allowed one person to weave fabric as wide as two people previously could. In short, fabric that once took a village a year to produce could now be manufactured in a single week. This production boom placed textiles at the heart of the global economy. Prices fell, products diversified, and the middle class gained access to fabrics once reserved for elites. Yet, mechanization also transformed society itself. Human-based craftsmanship gave way to factory labor. The domestic system collapsed, and industrial capitalism rose. This was not just a technological revolution. It was a reordering of social life. Behind industrial success lay a darker truth. Textile factories became symbols of exploitation. During the 19th century, women and children made up most of the workforce. Long hours, dangerous machinery, dust-filled air, and poor ventilation caused widespread injury and illness. Accidents were common. Shuttles flew, limbs were crushed, hair caught in spools. Textile factories ranked among the most dangerous workplaces of the era. Yet these harsh conditions sparked major social change. Labor movements, Child labor bans and unions emerged from textile workers' struggles. Textile factories became the birthplace of modern labor rights. The 20th century brought a second great textile revolution, this time from laboratories rather than nature. Synthetic fibers such as nylon, polyester, acrylic, and elastane reshaped production. Nylon, developed in the 1930s, was described as stronger than steel and finer than spider's silk. Polyester followed, offering durability, low cost, and ease of production. These materials expanded rapidly during wartime and later flooded everyday life. However, their environmental consequences were not yet understood. This era introduced fast fashion, cheap, disposable, and endlessly consumed. Today, the textile industry is one of the planet's greatest environmental burdens. Millions of tons of clothing are discarded each year. Synthetic fibers persist for centuries, releasing microplastics into oceans. Textiles also consume vast water resources. Producing a single pair of jeans requires thousands of liters of water. Fast fashion accelerates waste, pollution, and carbon emissions, turning textiles into a planetary crisis rather than a mere industry. As environmental damage became undeniable, science turned to solutions. Mycelium-based leather, lab-grown spider silk, recycled polyester, and biodegradable cellulose fibers are redefining textiles. Fabric is evolving toward sustainability, ethics, and ecological harmony. Today, textiles are becoming intelligent surfaces, integrated with sensors, data, and artificial intelligence. They regulate temperature, monitor health, and interact with environments. Clothing is becoming an interface between human and machine. Textiles began as humanity's oldest necessity. Over time, they became civilization's invisible backbone. Every stitch holds memory. Every fiber carries history. When you look at fabric now, you will no longer see only a surface. You will see the texture of civilization. You will see the threads of time.